One Friday evening, everything changed forever. Nkem had spent the day alone. Ogachukwu had left early and hadn't called once. She had cooked, cleaned, and waited. Hours passed. Night came. The sky turned dark, and the streetlights outside began to glow. Still, there was no sign of him. Then, around 9:30 p.m., she heard the sound of a car horn. She rushed to the window. It was him. She fixed her scarf quickly, wiped her face, and opened the door. What she saw outside made her freeze. Ogachukwu stepped out of the car, not alone, but with a woman beside him. The woman was tall, light-skinned, with long hair and red lipstick. She wore a tight black gown and high heels. Her nails were long and painted. She looked confident and bold. Ogachukwu walked ahead with the car keys. The woman followed, carrying a handbag and a shopping bag. They walked into the house like it was normal, like it was planned, like Nkem didn't exist. Nkem stood in shock as they entered. Ogachukwu barely glanced at her. He simply pointed to the guest room and told the woman where to drop her bag. Then he turned and, with a face like stone, said something that felt like a punch to Nkem's chest. He introduced the woman as his second wife. Her breath caught in her throat. Her legs trembled, her hands felt cold. The other woman didn't greet her or even acknowledge her presence. She just walked past and headed to the room like she had every right. Nkem's heart exploded with anger and shame. Her mind spun in confusion. She couldn't believe it. She didn't know how to react. She had left everything for this man, and now he was bringing another woman into the same house. She tried to speak. Her voice was shaky. Her hands rose in protest. Ogachukwu didn't like it. He stepped closer to her with eyes full of fire, his body stiff, his lips tight. Without warning, without care, he lifted his hand and struck her across the face with the back of his hand. The slap landed with such force that she lost her balance. Her head turned sharply and her knees buckled beneath her. Before she could fully understand what had happened, he grabbed her arm roughly and pushed her aside. She flew across the room and landed against the edge of the sofa, not the soft part, but the sharp wooden corner. Her back hit the wood hard. A sound escaped her lips, something between a gasp and a cry. Her vision went blurry. Her breath stopped for a second. Then everything went dark. She blacked out. Silence swallowed the house. When Nkem opened her eyes again, the first thing she saw was a white ceiling. Then the cold smell of antiseptic filled her nose. The humming of a ceiling fan above her confirmed she was no longer at home. She tried to move, but her legs wouldn't respond. She turned her head slowly and saw an IV drip hanging beside her. Her body ached in places she didn't know could hurt. Her back felt like it was on fire. A nurse walked in, followed by her mother and two other women. Their faces were heavy, their eyes red, their silence louder than any scream. The doctor came in next. His face was serious but calm. He spoke gently, explaining the scan results. He said her spinal cord had been affected. The impact from the fall had damaged a part of her lower back. He said she might never walk again. Nkem blinked, but no tears came. Her body was frozen, her mouth dry. Her thoughts raced in all directions. She had chased luxury. She had walked away from love, peace, and family. She had followed the shiny road, and now it had led her to a hospital bed, broken, helpless, and full of regret. The hospital days were long, painful, and slow. Nkem lay on the narrow bed by the window, staring at the ceiling for hours. The white walls made her feel small. The beeping sounds from the machines beside her reminded her she was no longer in control. Nurses came and went. Some were kind, others cold. She barely noticed them. Her back ached every day. Her legs refused to move. The doctor said the damage was serious. Something in her spine had shifted during the fall. He said she might not walk again, not even with therapy. He said there was a chance of healing, but it was very slim. She didn't ask for details. She didn't want hope. She was broken, physically and inside her soul. Ogachukwu didn't come back to see her. The woman he brought into the house disappeared after that night. Some neighbors said they packed their bags the same night and vanished. Others said he moved to another city, but no one was sure. All that mattered was that he was gone. Gone without a word. Gone like she was trash. She never imagined it would end like that. She had pictured a different life, a new beginning, a perfect ending. But all she got was pain, shame, and silence. Her mother stayed by her side in the hospital. She slept on a bench beside the bed, waking every hour to check if her daughter was breathing. She brought food, fetched water, and bathed Kim when the nurses ignored her. But her mother never said, "I told you so." She didn't need to. Her silence was enough. After 2 weeks in the hospital, they could no longer afford to stay. Bills piled up, medications finished. The doctor said it was time for her to go home. Not her real home. Not the house she once shared with Livinus and the children. No. This time she was going back to the village. Her mother arranged for a tricycle to take them to the park. 2 young boys carried Kim into the bus. Her face was covered with a scarf, but people still stared. Her eyes were empty. Her body felt like a stone. The journey was rough. Every bump in the road sent pain through her spine. She cried silently all the way, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. When they reached the village, the news had already spread. Somebody at the hospital had told someone. That person told another. By the time they arrived at the compound, people were standing outside watching. The once proud daughter of the soil had returned, crippled and disgraced. She was carried into the room she grew up in, the same small room with brown curtains and wooden windows, the same bed she used to lie on as a teenager, dreaming of the city life. Now she was back, with no husband, no children, no dignity. Days passed slowly. Her mother did everything for her, washed her clothes, bathed her, fed her, turned her from side to side. And Kim couldn't even sit up without help. Her body had become a burden. She stopped talking. She stopped eating much. She kept her eyes on the wall all day. Sometimes her mother spoke to her, hoping to cheer her up. But Kim said very little. She responded with nods, single words, or silence. Her phone rang sometimes, but she didn't answer. Once she dialed Levinus's number just to hear his voice. He picked. The line was quiet. She said hello. He didn't speak. She tried again. He ended the call. She sent messages. No reply. She tried calling the children. They refused to speak. Amanda once answered the phone. As soon as she heard her mother's voice, she handed the phone to Livinus and walked away. That silence from her children broke her heart more than the accident. They had loved her. They had cried when she left, and now they didn't want to hear her voice. She cried for hours that night, not loud, not with screams, but with soft sobs that soaked her pillow and refused to stop. Her mother held her, wiped her tears, and sang soft songs to calm her down. And Kim stopped posting online. She deleted all the pictures she had once flaunted. The soft life was gone. The gold necklace was gone. The spa days, the dresses, the hotel visits, all gone. Now she wore old wrappers and hospital gowns. She smelled of antiseptic cream and liniment. Her nails were chipped. Her hair was rough. Her skin was dull. But the worst part wasn't the physical pain. It was the shame. When her mother wheeled her out in the evening to sit under the mango tree, neighbors watched from behind windows. Some whispered, some pointed, some just stared. She could feel their eyes on her, the once glowing tailor of the city, now just a shadow of herself. Her life had become a story. People told it over palm wine, over firewood fires, over sea. She cried for hours that night. Not loud, not with screams, but with soft sobs that soaked her pillow and refused to stop. Her mother held her, wiped her tears, and sang soft songs to calm her down. The girl stepped forward looking shy. Then she smiled and said something Kim never expected. She said, "Auntie, I always admired your family. Why did you throw it away?" Morning. As the sun rose and her mother went to the market, a quiet knock came on the door. It wasn't loud, just soft and unsure. And Kim, lying on the bed near the window, turned her head slowly. The door creaked open. A young girl stepped in holding a small food flask. She was about 18 or 19, wearing a long skirt and a neat top. Her hair was braided, and her face was clean. And Kim blinked, trying to remember. No reply. She tried calling the children. They refused to speak. Amanda once answered the phone. As soon as she heard her mother's voice, she handed the phone to Livinus and walked away. That silence from her children broke her heart more than the accident. They had loved her, they had cried when she left, and now they didn't want to hear her voice. She cried for hours that night. Not loud, not with screams, but with soft sobs that soaked her pillow and refused to stop. Her mother held her, wiped her tears, and sang soft songs to calm her down. Kim stopped posting online. She deleted all the pictures she had once flaunted. The soft life was gone. The gold necklace was gone. The spa days, the dresses, the hotel visits, all gone. Now she wore old wrappers and hospital gowns. She smelled of antiseptic cream and liniment. Her nails were chipped, her hair was rough, her skin was dull. But the worst part wasn't the physical pain, it was the shame. When her mother wheeled her out in the evening to sit under the mango tree, neighbors watched from behind windows. Some whispered, some pointed, some just stared. She could feel their eyes on her. The once glowing tailor of the city, now just a shadow of herself. Her life had become a story. People told it over palm wine, over firewood fires, over church gossip circles. She knew the words they used. She thought she was better than us. She left her husband for soft life. Now see her, crippled and alone. Her ears burned with shame. One Tuesday morning, as the sun rose and her mother went to the market, a quiet knock came on the door. It wasn't loud, just soft and unsure. Kim, lying on the bed near the window, turned her head slowly. The door creaked open. A young girl stepped in, holding a small food flask. She was about 18 or 19, wearing a long skirt and a neat top. Her hair was braided, and her face was clean. And Kim blinked, trying to remember. The girl stepped forward, looking shy. Then she smiled and said something Kim never expected. She said, "Auntie, I always admired your family. Why did you throw it away?" The sun was already high in the sky as Livinus walked through the dusty path leading to the building site. His shirt clung to his back, soaked with sweat. His trousers were stained with cement. The boots on his feet were cracked and worn from years of hard work. His shoulders ached, his hands were rough, and his knees creaked with every step, but he didn't stop. Every day was the same. Wake up before sunrise, prepare the children for school, cook simple food, dress them, drop them off, rush to the site, work all day, return home, pick the children, bathe them, feed them, help with homework, sleep late, wake early, repeat. It was tiring, it was lonely, but Livinus did not complain. He missed Kim. Not because he still wanted her back, he didn't, but because the children still talked about her, asked questions, and sometimes cried in their sleep. Amanda would stare at old pictures. Ibuka would sit quietly after school, holding the teddy bear his mother bought him on his 5th birthday. Livinus saw the pain in their small hearts, and he carried it like a silent load everywhere he went. He stayed strong for them. He never shouted. He never showed anger. Even when money was tight and food was small, he found a way. Some weeks he would mold blocks during the day and take up night watch duties for extra income. His body suffered, but he never allowed the children to go hungry. Their teachers at school often said, "Your kids are so polite, so calm, so bright." He would smile and nod, but inside he wished they didn't have to grow up with such pain. One Monday morning, Livinus was on a site near the expressway. It was a massive project, a new plaza with many floors. There were workers everywhere, machines buzzing, cement mixing, and people shouting instructions. He worked silently, carrying heavy blocks and setting them in place with other men. The sun was hot and dust filled the air. Then suddenly someone called his name. At first he didn't hear it. The voice called again, louder, clearer. He turned around slowly, his hands still covered in cement. A man in clean clothes, a hard hat, and safety boots was walking towards him. He was tall, fair-skinned, and wearing designer sunglasses. His steps were confident, but his face looked familiar. As he came closer, Levinas squinted. Then it hit him. It was Tearjerker, his childhood friend. The boy he used to play football with in the village square, the one who left for Europe after secondary school. They had lost contact for years. Rumor had it that Tearjerker made it big in business overseas. No one knew exactly what he did, but they heard he was now a successful man. Now here he was, standing in front of Levinas. They hugged tightly, forgetting the cement and the dust. For a few seconds the past returned. They were boys again, running in the rain, climbing trees, laughing under mango trees. Tearjerker stepped back and looked at Levinas from head to toe. He was shocked. His old friend, the kindest, most humble boy he ever knew, was still molding blocks, still struggling, still dressed in faded clothes and worn-out boots. Tearjerker didn't say much at first, but his heart burned with emotion. He saw the lines on Levinas's face. He saw the tiredness in his eyes. He saw the weight he was carrying silently. He asked Levinas to come with him. That same day, Tearjerker took him to his office, an air-conditioned building with a receptionist, leather chairs, and smart staff. He gave him water, food, a bath, clean clothes. Then he asked him a simple question. "What do you want to do with your life?" Levinas didn't answer immediately. His eyes welled up. He looked away, ashamed, but Tearjerker held his hand and told him that he didn't want to see his friend suffer again, not after all these years. That was how everything changed. Tearjerker offered Levinas a full-time managerial position on the construction project, not just as a block molder, but as a team supervisor. He gave him a uniform, safety gear, and a monthly salary that was 3 times what he had ever earned. But that was not all. Tearjerker also asked about his children. Levinas told him the whole story. How Kim left, how she chased luxury, how she ended up in pain. He didn't say it with bitterness. He simply told it as it happened. She said the children needed professional help, not just love and care, but therapy. She explained how trauma can sit quietly in a child's heart and grow like a shadow. She offered to help them find the right therapist. Levinas agreed. He didn't understand much about therapy, but he wanted healing for his children and for himself. Tearjerker listened carefully, his eyes filled with sadness. Then he called his wife, a kind, gentle woman named Amara. She had a background in psychology and worked part-time with a children's support center. When she heard about Amanda and Ibuka, she asked if she could meet them. The next weekend, Levinas brought the children to the new staff quarters Tearjerker provided for him. The children were shy at first, but Amara welcomed them with warmth. She made them fruit juice, played soft music, and gave them toys. She spoke gently. She asked questions kindly. She didn't force smiles. She gave them space. By evening, Amanda was laughing again. Ibuka was opening up. Amara noticed something, though. Even with their smiles, they were holding back. There was a sadness they couldn't explain, a missing piece they didn't know how to talk about. Later that night, she spoke with Tearjerker and Levinas. She said the children needed professional help, not just love and care, but therapy. She explained how trauma can sit quietly in a child's heart and grow like a shadow. She offered to help them find the right therapist. Levinas agreed. He didn't understand much about therapy, but he wanted healing for his children and for himself. The village was quiet as usual. Chickens moved about freely, children chased tires, and smoke rose from kitchen fires. But inside a small room, behind faded pink curtains and an old iron bed, and Kem sat in her wheelchair, staring at a piece of paper on her lap. Her hand trembled as she held the pen. Her heart beat slowly, painfully, as if it didn't want her to write what she was about to write. She had started the letter more than 10 times and torn each one. But today, she was going to finish it. She wanted to talk to Livinus, not in person. She didn't have the courage, not through a call. He had blocked her number, so she decided to write him a letter. She wanted to say sorry, not just for what she did, but for how she did it. She wanted to say she was ashamed, she was broken, and that if she could turn back time, she would choose differently. She wrote slowly, explaining her pain, how the lies of the world fooled her, how she chased things that didn't last, how she traded gold for glitter. She told him how her nights were filled with regret, and how every morning she woke up wishing it was all a dream. Her words were heavy, raw, honest. At the end of the letter, she begged. She didn't ask for a second chance. She only asked for forgiveness. She wanted peace. For herself. She wanted to stop carrying the guilt like a bag of stones. She wanted her soul to rest. She gave the letter to her cousin, who still lived in the city, and asked her to deliver it by hand to Livinus. A week passed, then 2. On the 3rd week, a reply came back. It wasn't long, just one sentence written in Livinus's quiet, steady handwriting. "I forgave you long ago, but we've moved on." That was all. No insults, no emotions, just the truth. And Kem read it over and over again. She cried, but not because he rejected her. She cried because she knew he meant every word. She had truly lost him. Not because he hated her, but because life had moved forward without her. And that was the kind of pain that no medicine could heal. Back in the city, Livinus had become a new man. People in the neighborhood watched with wonder. The same man whose wife mocked for being short, dark, and poor was now a respected business owner. The same man who was once pitied was now honored. He didn't flaunt his success. He stayed simple, humble, but his life was no longer the same. After receiving the manager job from Tearjerker, his life began to shift, slowly at first, then quickly. His confidence grew. His speech improved. He started taking online business classes. He read books at night. He watched videos on YouTube. He listened to advice. He was no longer the quiet man who kept his head down. He was now a man with vision. With Tearjerker's help, Livinus saved enough money and started his own small block-making company. He named it Divine Strength Blocks, a name that reminded him of everything he had survived. He hired other workers, bought better tools, and rented a large space near the Express. Soon his blocks were in high demand. Contractors who once ignored him were now placing orders. News of his growth spread. He moved his children to better schools. Amanda won a scholarship for her excellence in mathematics. Ibuka followed closely, winning an award in science. Their school fees were covered for the next 5 years. People in the neighborhood watched with wonder. The same man whose wife mocked for being short, dark, and poor was now a respected business owner. The same man who was once pitied was now honored. He didn't flaunt his success. He stayed simple, humble, but his life was no longer the same. One bright Saturday morning, Livinus stood beside a new bungalow in Lekki. He held a set of keys in his hand, his eyes misty. The house was modest but beautiful. Painted cream with brown roofing, it had 3 bedrooms, a paved compound, and a small garden at the side where Amanda had already planted flowers. It was his first house, paid in full. He walked in with the children, smiling as they jumped on the sofas and explored every corner. This was the life he had dreamed of. Not riches beyond measure, but peace, joy, and a home where love was not faked or forced. He took a picture of the house and shared it on his new Facebook account with a simple caption, "From dust to destiny." That picture traveled, even to the village, and Kim saw it late at night. She had been scrolling through Facebook with her left hand. The right side of her body still ached from time to time. Her back was no longer in constant pain, but she still couldn't walk. A neighbor had bought her a second-hand smartphone to keep her company. She saw the photo of the house. Then others followed. Pictures of Amanda holding a trophy at school, Ibuka with his certificate, Levinus in a neat shirt shaking hands with other builders. She zoomed in. They all looked happy. Amanda's smile had grown wider. Ibuka looked taller. Levinus looked younger, stronger, and peaceful. And Kim dropped the phone on her lap and stared out the window. She wanted to feel happy for them, but all she felt was a deep, burning sadness. One afternoon, she was taken to a small church crusade at the village field. Her mother had insisted. The guest pastor was known for praying for healing and deliverance. The field was filled with people, young and old, poor and rich, sick and healthy. They sang, danced, and shouted. And Kim sat in her wheelchair near the middle, her head bowed. The preacher climbed the stage and began to speak. He talked about choices, he talked about pride, he talked about second chances and how some people never get them back. As he spoke, something inside in Kim began to stir. Her chest tightened. Her eyes filled with tears. Her hands shook. She had never truly spoken about what happened. Not to anyone. Not fully. She had carried the weight alone. But now, something pushed her. When the preacher asked if anyone wanted to share a testimony or confession, she raised her hand. There was silence. People turned to look. Whispers began. They wheeled her forward. She took the microphone with trembling fingers. The crowd stood still, and then she spoke. She told her story from the beginning, how she once had a peaceful home, a loving husband, and 2 beautiful children. How envy entered her heart, how she listened to wrong advice, how she chased vanity, how she abandoned her family, how she ended up broken and alone. She cried, not small tears, heavy tears. She said she was not looking for pity. She said she just wanted to warn other women. She begged them not to make the same mistake. She begged them to be wise. She begged them to love the ones who love them and not chase shadows. She said, "If my story can save just one woman, then my pain is not in vain." The field was silent. Then slowly people began to clap, not out of joy but out of respect. Even in her shame, Nkem found the courage to speak the truth. Nkem grew weaker with each passing day. Her health, already damaged by the accident, began to fade faster than expected. Her body was tired. Her bones ached. Eating became difficult. Her eyes lost their brightness. Her mother noticed the changes and became worried. Even the nurses at the local health center began to whisper. Something was wrong, something deep and final. As Nkem lay in her bed, the silence of the room often grew louder than noise. Her thoughts never left her. She remembered the small hands of her children, their laughter, their tears the day she walked away. She remembered Levinus's quiet strength, his patience, his silent sacrifices. She remembered how she traded love for luxury and lost everything. But more than anything, she longed to see her children again. She didn't want to return to their lives. She didn't want to take anything back. She just wanted to look at them one more time, to say sorry with her eyes, to hear their voices, even if they spoke only a few words. She wanted peace before death. She begged her mother to send a message. She begged the pastor to try calling Levinus again. Days passed. Her body grew colder. After many silent prayers, a message finally came back. Levinus had replied. He had sent his address. He agreed. Not because he wanted her to return, but because he understood that sometimes forgiveness is not for the past, but for the soul. Nkem's eyes filled with tears when she saw the paper. Her hands trembled as she held it close to her chest. 2 days later, Nkem, her mother, and their village pastor made the long journey to the city. They traveled slowly, carrying medicine, blankets, and a small bag of personal things. and Kem was lifted carefully into the car. Her face was pale, her body fragile, but her heart held on. She had one last thing to do. When they arrived at the beautiful bungalow in Lekki, they were welcomed by silence. The air was clean, the compound neat. Flowers bloomed in the garden Amanda had planted, and Kem's heart broke again at the sight. This was the home she could have helped build. This was the life she had thrown away. They were welcomed inside. The children stood at a distance, unsure. Livinus stood with them, quiet, his face calm but unreadable. And Kem did not ask for hugs, she did not expect smiles. She simply lowered her head and began to speak. Her voice was weak, but her words were clear. She apologized for everything, for the pain, for the silence, for the scars. She admitted her wrongs. She begged them not for love, not for a second chance, but for peace. She said she was dying. She said she wanted to leave this world with nothing heavy in her heart. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she spoke. Her mother wept quietly beside her. The pastor held her shoulder and whispered prayers under his breath. Livinus said nothing for a long time. Then, slowly, he stepped forward. He looked into her eyes and nodded. The children stood still, unsure at first, but Amanda stepped forward and gently placed her small hand in her mother's palm. Ibuka followed, placing a flower he had plucked earlier on her lap. They didn't say anything. They didn't have to. The moment was full. Forgiveness was given. Peace was released. They stayed for a short while. Then Kem and her family quietly left. There was no big farewell, no promises, just peace. 2 days later, in the early hours of the morning, and Kem took her last breath. She was in her sleep. No pain, no struggle, just silence. Her mother found her with a faint smile on her face, her hands folded on her chest, and the small photo of her children beside her pillow. She was buried in the village the following week. The story of her life became a quiet lesson. People who once whispered behind her now spoke with softer voices. The pastor who stood at her graveside told the truth, that some mistakes are loud but forgiveness can be louder, that some journeys end in pain, but healing can still be found before the final breath. Livinus and the children sent flowers. Amanda wrote a note and placed it in her mother's grave. Ibuka drew a small picture of their family, together. They didn't forget, but they moved on with peace in their hearts. Lesson: never destroy what you're meant to build simply because others make you doubt its value. Love, respect, and peace are priceless, and when lost, some things can never be fully restored. Think deeply before you walk away from a good thing, because regret often arrives too late, and not every mistake gives you time to fix it. Thank you for watching this story on Folktales TV. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, leave us a comment, and share with friends and family. We have more beautiful stories coming your way, so subscribe and stay tuned. See you in the next one.